Inspired by Bafael's Bad Balance series, I wanted to discuss the balance history of a character who is very close to my heart, Raven in Guilty Gear Xrd. I've played Raven for a couple years now, but I didn't play him in previous versions because I found him overpowered and boring. I wanted to explain just how absurd he was when he first released in Revelator. Despite his origins, Raven's general moveset has been hammered into something fairly balanced and interesting. I think seeing these changes will help people appreciate how hard it is to balance fighting game characters, especially considering factors like animations and manpower. To start, what defines Raven? He has extremely long, often disjointed attacks and great anti-airs. Honorable mention goes to his Scratch special move. In Guilty Gear, characters often don't get access to good knockdowns and set play at every range, but Raven is a notable exception. He can knock down from very far away and still hit with a meaty attack most of the time. He has great projectiles that let him zone and apply Okizeme. Two extremely far, if slow, command grabs. An invisible, invincible forward dash with only the usual dash recovery. A normal throw that lets him combo. A glide instead of a forward air dash, which is a great mix-up tool. A character resource that lets him snowball well because it increases his damage output and combo options. An armored stance which can absorb almost anything. Many combos and moves which are naturally burst safe, very easy and very stable. His drawbacks are slow frame data on most normals and special moves, and only a single ground normal that's plus on block. Tons of whiff recovery on almost everything. Difficulty escaping the corner because his air dash moves him towards the ground. Low damage output without his character resource. A bad defense modifier that means he takes a lot of damage early in his life bar and among the worst stun resistance in the game. A cripplingly slow start to his forward dash. Raven is a character who excels in neutral and Okizeme, but who has poor raw pressure and can struggle to kill because of his low damage output. His bad defense modifier and stun also make him very fragile, especially if he's taken a couple hits with his armor stance. Precision is very important to playing Raven, because although his normals and dash are excellent, using them the wrong way is asking to lose. Right now, Raven has distinct strengths and weaknesses, which I'll discuss more thoroughly later, but this wasn't always true. When Raven was first added to Guilty Gear Xrd Revelator, almost none of the weaknesses I mentioned were relevant, and his strengths were very one-dimensional. For starters, his mechanics weren't very interesting. Raven's character resource is excitement, which represents his masochistic tendencies and arrogance. He literally stands there, letting his opponent hit him. Raven's kind of a weirdo. Welcome to Guilty Gear. Every hit Raven absorbed was one tick of excitement, and he'd passively gain excitement while in the armor stance. He could even absorb unblockable strikes and projectiles. Each tick gave him a 3% damage boost, and over the course of a combo this could really add up. 3 ticks equals 1 excitement level. Raven started at level 1 and could go up to level 2 or level 3. Pay attention to the gauge in these examples. Get enough excitement and Raven's moves gained new properties. Raven's excitement gauge also never decreased. Once he absorbed a few hits, he was stronger until the end of the round. He couldn't act after doing a scratch in the air, which made scratch one of his least interesting special moves. The ground version was safe on block and knockdown on hit, so he used it to end block strings and combos, and the air version was just a move that dealt damage and knocked his opponent away. But none of this mattered, because his ground orb projectile was so oppressive. Ground orb was a 3-hit projectile Raven could cancel into from his 2D, or sweep, that would hit melee against all characters and was active enough it'd beat any backdash or reversal. Here you can see it beating Sin's backdash, and Sin has a really good backdash with a lot of invulnerability and backwards movement. You can also see it beating Sin's reversal. Ground Orb was also so plus on block that it let Raven get a guaranteed high-low mix-up against any character. Comboing off a hit like this was not difficult because Orb hit grounded. In fact, any combo would lead back to the same situation. Orb could also be combined with Glide to enforce unreactable, unfuzzyable mix-ups. While all this is happening, Raven is pushing his opponent to the corner. It was possible to escape with something like Blitz or Dead Angle, but it wasn't foolproof. As a final tidbit, Raven could also air throw during his glide. This meant that fuzzy jumping, a very strong defensive option select to escape mix-ups in Guilty Gear, was also slightly weaker. Even if Raven mistimed the glide approach with jump H, he might have just grabbed you out of the air. This was fixed in a patch relatively soon after Revelator launched, so I can't show it off. I don't think I ever saw it in a tournament set, so it was very rare. Revelator was patched twice. The first of these patches had the glide air throw fix and nothing else substantial for Raven. The same was true of the second patch. His glide and far S had their hurt boxes expanded slightly, and his jump P gained initial scaling of 90%. Side note, Guilty Gear uses a variety of different damage mechanics to affect the damage that attacks deal in combos. One of these mechanics is initial scaling, which means that if a move is used to start a combo, then it reduces the damage of each subsequent combo hit. Raven's jump P previously had no initial scaling, which made it a very solid air-to-air option. The 10% damage reduction is technically a nerf, but the move was still just as good to use. The closest thing to a real nerf in these patch notes was the initial scaling change on Raven's 2K, which was reduced from 90% to 80%. This meant that Raven would deal slightly less damage when using his fastest low option in a mix-up, but that low option was still his best way to apply mix-ups. As you might expect, Raven was a dominant tournament character in Revelator. He was popular everywhere, but there were 2 Japanese players in particular who really showed how oppressive he could be. These players were Kazunoko and Dogura, 2 Guilty Gear veterans. They became infamous for sweeping American tournaments in 2016 because Raven provided them with a very simple, very stable character. He could simply win neutral more often and apply more Okizeme than other characters. If you weren't paying attention to Revelator at the time, it may seem hard to believe that people actually wanted to watch tournaments like this. The truth is, even by the standards of Guilty Gear Xrd, most people knew that Raven was brain dead easy. However, Raven wasn't truly broken, so banning him wasn't an option. Revelator was overall an improvement from the previous game version, Guilty Gear Xrd Sign, but Raven was one of the balance missteps that would take a long time to be corrected fully. As an anecdote, I did not play Raven at the time even though I thought he was cool because he was too boring and easy. I personally remember waiting for patch notes to see if the balance team would fix Raven. It was obvious to anyone who played the game that he was overpowered. In absolute terms, Revelator Raven was probably the strongest he has ever been. His neutral game was insurmountable for some characters and any hit would lead into Okizeme. His Okizeme was brain dead easy and worked against every character, and trying to escape it made the defender take a lot more risks than Raven. However, there were several other extremely strong characters like Johnny, Millia, and Sin who overshadowed Raven and made it difficult to judge just how strong he was. Guilty Gear Xrd Rev 2 released about a year after Revelator. Rev 2 introduced 2 new characters, gave some characters new moves, and rebalanced the entire cast. Rev 2 would receive a final patch in early 2018, Rev 2.1. Unfortunately, this means I can't show you everything from Rev 2.0. In Rev 2.0, Raven received major changes. Raven's 2H was no longer totally disjointed. Raven's 2H is a very long and low move, so this change made the attack less dumb. It's still quite dumb. Raven's 6P anti-air attack was no longer jump cancelable. This was a big deal. In Guilty Gear, not having a jump cancelable anti-air move means that a character must either use a special move or gatling into another normal attack to continue a combo after anti-airing. This introduces more potential points of failure and generally makes an anti-air much worse. Raven's 6P still had a good hitbox, so landing it was easy, but his only gatling option was 5S, so converting a hit into damage was harder. Because 5S is a universal proximity normal, this made 6P anti-air combos even more unstable. If you anti-aired someone at the wrong angle, you might not be able to combo on normal hit. On counter hit, Raven could still combo into his anti-air command grab, but this could whiff if the opponent was too high or too far away. 6P no longer being jump cancelable meant Raven had no all-round reliable anti-air option. Anti-airing characters in Guilty Gear was hard anyway because almost everyone has a double jump or an air dash to make their air movement less predictable. Even characters with bad mobility have ways to make grounded anti-airs unreliable. The lack of a reliable upper body invulnerable anti-air is a weakness that still affects Raven today. His go-to anti-air is now 5K, since that move is jump cancelable and has much less whiff recovery. But it's not invulnerable. Raven's excitement system was overhauled completely in Rev 2.0. He now gained excitement from connecting with certain attacks, 1 tick for his scratch, 3 ticks for his command grabs, and 5 ticks for his dash super. His excitement stance now gave him 3 ticks per hit absorbed instead of 1. This meant Raven could absorb a single stray poke or projectile and instantly receive a 9% damage boost, better combos, and better okizeme. Absorb 2 pokes, or a multi-hit projectile, and the damage boost doubles or triples. In exchange for all this, his excitement stance no longer worked against unblockable strikes, although this seemed like a bug fix rather than a balance decision. More importantly, excitement would drain after 10 seconds of no excitement gain, or drain immediately if he connected with his stab super. This super is Raven's only true reversal, and this change weakened it by imposing a drawback even when it connects. Raven could still use his excitement stance to gain a tick and refresh the timer, but that was a big commitment. Raven's JD was his primary combo ender because it knocked down from anywhere. Raven's other air combo ender was air scratch, which usually let the opponent tech out and return to neutral. But doing that to preserve excitement might be worth it if you could win neutral in the next 10 seconds and continue pressure with a high excitement gauge. As part of the excitement change, 2 of Raven's special moves were altered, his scratch and his orb. Raven's scratch was changed to be 1 or 2 frames faster depending on excitement level. Small frame data changes like this don't usually mean much in Guilty Gear, but this change had one important effect. Raven could combo his 2D into scratch against more characters. In Revelator, 2D scratch had only worked on lightweight characters because they would be launched slightly higher by 2D. Having a combo that only works on certain characters or certain weight classes is common in Guilty Gear, and indeed in many fighting games. 2D into scratch allows Raven to hit with a meaty glide, but this change was rather puzzling because he still had no reason to end his ground combos this way. Raven's orb had its initial number of hits reduced from 3 to 2, but it gained an additional hit with each excitement level, up to 4 hits in total. This was a step in the right direction, but unfortunately a 2-hit orb was still enough to lock down most characters and prevent them from counterattacking. The intention of the Rev 2.0 changes was to encourage Raven to be more aggressive whenever he got a good opening. If he sat back and played lame, he would become a significantly weaker character because level 1 excitement Raven is limited compared to level 2 or 3 excitement. Unfortunately, level 1 excitement Raven was still a dominant and miserable top tier. While it is true that this new orb made Raven's okizeme worse, it was still far too good considering how easy it was to use. Certain combos would gain Raven a lot of excitement and instantly give him a good okizeme situation. As with most of Raven's combos, these were not difficult. Rev 2.0 Raven was probably the strongest he has ever been relative to the rest of the cast. Raven was stronger absolutely in Revelator, but many of the top-tier terrors from that game had been nerfed in Rev 2.0. By contrast, Raven still had good tools and all the benefits of a new excitement system. Raven stole the spotlight and bored audiences all over the world. His neutral and okizeme were dominant, and he snowballed well. I remember the top 4 of one Asian tournament had 3 Ravens, and the commentators actually apologized for what the viewers were about to see. I can attest that apology was justified. Rev 2.0 Raven was a case of Arc System Works' intended balance decisions backfiring. The nerfs weren't strong enough, but he was still buffed in other ways to compensate. These factors created a character who had the best of both worlds. This isn't actually uncommon in fighting games, at least ones developed by Arc System Works. They have a reputation for throwing stuff at the wall when it comes to balance, and sometimes they throw badly. Rev 2.1 was the final patch for Guilty Gear Xrd, and Raven received some more major changes. Finally, after the better part of 2 years, Raven's ground orb was truly nerfed. Instead of staying in place, it now rises once Raven throws it. It also becomes slower to start up, which means the air version is faster by at least 14 frames, including jump startup. These changes mean 2D into ground orb will whiff on most crouching characters and can be backdashed easily. With this new orb, Raven finally lost the brain-dead easy okizeme he could do from 2D into orb. Almost every character can now hit Raven if he tries to glide after setting the orb, either with a crouching attack or a 6p anti-air. This is true even for characters with notoriously bad anti-airs. Some characters are large enough to be hit crouching, but the orb is still much less threatening. The other major change was to Raven's air scratch, which is now a much more versatile and interesting move. If Raven builds up speed during a glide or hits with the glide attack itself, his scratch has faster startup and recovery. The normal air scratch also lets Raven act after he completes it if he's high enough. These two changes give Raven a ton of combo options in the corner and mid-screen. That may not seem like a lot, but compared to Raven's old combos, it's much more stimulating. Raven's excitement drain timer is paused while he's in hit stun, which is a small but nice buff. In Rev 2.0, almost any long combo would guarantee that Raven lost his excitement and became a worse character. Now he doesn't lose anything except the health from the combo. Raven's jump D was also changed to have less hit stun on the second hit so that it no longer knocks down from anywhere. It still knocks down from most heights though, so I'm not sure what the point of this change was. The only thing Raven really lost was the option to do a full up-dust combo and use JD for a knockdown. None of Raven's normal combo routes are high enough for the change to matter. As you've seen in this video, fighting game character balance is an art more than a science. Polishing characters to a finished state is tougher than creating them in the first place. With Raven in particular, the designers have said that part of the reason he looks so different from his appearances in other Guilty Gear games is because they wanted to focus on making him stretchy. They had been developing the technology behind the Guilty Gear Xrd art style to facilitate stretchy and bendy characters. That was the inspiration for Raven having so many animations where his limbs stretch and twist. This is very funny, but it also had a couple consequences. Raven was designed to have long limbs, so nerfing him by making his attacks shorter was not feasible past a certain point. Otherwise, his animations would need to be redone, and that would cost a lot more than simply adjusting the hitboxes or hurtboxes. Imagine a world where Raven's 2H only reached half as far but still had the same animation. Any game will have a reduced budget of time and money outside of major revisions. Some games do give characters new moves or completely change attacks in small patches, but this has its own pitfalls. When balancing Raven, the team had several restrictions because of the art style chosen for the character and the fact he was being balanced mostly outside of major updates. He can't get new moves or have moves changed into completely new animations. He can't have his animations adjusted. His gameplay identity is focused on very good neutral and very good okizeme, so those can't be totally removed. All things considered, Raven's general balance history has made him rely more on his excitement gauge. His neutral is still very good, but he's now focused on picking the right tool for each situation rather than just abusing one or two. I think Raven is in a healthy balanced state right now, or at least as healthy as he can be given what he can do. He has distinct strengths and weaknesses, and playing him successfully involves decisions that take advantage of his good tools. Raven's still super cheap, obviously, but at least he's not totally brain dead anymore.